Hey guys, welcome to a Wednesday SJU. I'm Eric Goldman. I'm very happy to be here today with Kim Taylor Foster and making her triumphant pandemic return to SJU, Vanessa Guerrero. Hey guys.
Hi.
Hello.
Nice to see you both, Vanessa. How you doing? How's the pandemic been treating you?
I'm having dull fun.
That's all we can ask these days, right?
That's all I can really do.
Well, great to see you. Miss seeing you at a desk in a physical location, but that was so 2019, right?
Yeah, my lower half hasn't been seen in over a year.
Yeah, exactly. So let us jump into our first story today. And it's a familiar story, but I don't know. Are we nearing the end of it, which is about movies that have been held and not held, and the studios holding out hope for the latter half of 2021, and will things return to normal-ish? This is coming from THR, who are looking at the fact that, like, as we all know, throughout the pandemic, a ton of the big event movies have been delayed over and over and over again, while some have made the move to streaming, or you've seen a lot of sort of in-house streaming service, which is a Disney moving Soul and Hamilton to Disney Plus, now HBO Max making this huge deal to put all their movies, all the Warner Brothers movies in HBO Max. But meanwhile, you've got the big movies that keep being delayed. And as THR notes, that's because if you paid $200 million to make your movie and you're hoping to make $1 billion at the box office, no streaming service can make up for that. There's almost no way that financially you're going to make the money you would have made and made the profit where you think, oh, sequel, definitely, and you're making merchandise and all that stuff. My friend Julia Alexander, she noted on Twitter today that Moffett Nathanson, who are a research group, said that they estimate that Warner Media is probably spending $2 billion. It's going to cost them to make this HBO Max move, which they're doing at a big loss just to get subscribers. So we're seeing all these delays, and we've seen a bunch more happen recently because there's this hope that the vaccine now is starting to roll out, maybe not as quickly as we'd like it to, but that maybe by the back half of the year, people could be going back to theaters more. And we had No Time to Die, which I believe was the first movie to get delayed when all this began. That got delayed again till October. Quiet Place 2 is now September. Sony pushed a bunch of movies, including Ghostbusters Afterlife, to November. Morbius and Uncharted aren't opening till 2022 anymore. And meanwhile, there's the theater question, and we're seeing AMC theaters actually seeming like things might be a little better than they were looking because they managed to restructure and stop a lot of the loss they were having. There's also, as Ryan noted right as we were starting, the craziness with the stocks and Redditors and all that. We're not going to get into that. We just want to note it's happening and it's weird, and none of us are stock experts. But maybe we'll dive more into that soon. So now we've got the movies that are still on the schedule, right, for the next few months. Includes Black Widow, Fast 9, Venom, Top Gun. And we just had Paramount tell THR, oh no, we're not going to move Top Gun to Paramount Plus. And we hear the same thing with Disney Plus and Black Widow. So let's get into this. There's this hope. Things might get back to normal by fall, and that's what all these big movies are hoping for. I want to tackle Black Widow first because I feel like it's a little bit of a unique situation because it's not just a big movie, it's MCU big movie, and they're all connected. What do you guys think? I know that they just said, no, there's no plans, but there's been so many times we heard there's no plans and then things changed very quickly. Do you think Black Widow still continues on as a theatrical only movie, or is Disney Plus with premiere access inevitably in its future?
That one's so tough because I feel like there's a timeline issue in that they have that Black Widow series coming out soon, and will that affect the actual timeline of the series coming out? Is it needed as a middle point between the two?
Yeah, I think you mean Hawkeye, which she is in though, Yelena, the Florence Pugh character. And that's my question too, right? It's like up till now, it's like, oh, it's a prequel. It's not going to hurt anything, but they don't want people to meet her first in Hawkeye.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. That's a major issue. The timeline thing. But one of my concerns about this is a film like Black Widow. It feels like we know these movies are in the bag, they're ready to go, right? And it almost feels like they have an expiry date that's just around the corner. You know, how long can you keep these movies on ice? It already feels like old news, the Black Widow movie. People will want to watch it for sure, but this is a film that I think Disney could move to Disney Plus, maybe Premium Access, or Premier Access, and get it. Maybe it's a loss leader. Disney can afford to do that with the MCU, right? It's a huge beast, a huge behemoth that will continue to release movies in the theater that will make tons of money. Maybe Black Widow is one that can take the hit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get this feeling that like they really don't want to, and Kevin Feige doesn't want to, but at a certain point, just because they're going to stick to this schedule for the TV shows, because which is a advantage they have, but it's also a disadvantage because now it sets a schedule to kind of get these things out. And so, yeah, I feel like they might just be like, okay, Black Widow, we got to put this sucker out one way or the other. I don't know. Like, do we get one last shift? And, because right now, what is it? Black Widow, May, Shang-Chi in July, and Eternals, November. Do they do one more shift? But then there's the Spider-Man Sony question. So it feels like extra messy with this one. What do you think, though, Vanessa, about what Kim was saying? Because I think that's a big question, is especially the movies that got a lot of promo before they got pulled, because some of them we'd barely seen trailers yet. But like Bond, No Time to Die was like it was totally being heavily promoted. Black Widow is being pretty heavily promoted. Fast 9 already. Does it kind of make it feel like after does it feel like old news if it does finally come out in a theater after all this?
I mean, I get what you mean in terms of like all of the promo already happened, and it almost feels like we already saw the movie and then we didn't. But at the same time, it doesn't necessarily feel like old news, because I'm watching with all of like these new streaming releases, how much specifically social media is giving that extra secondary boost, because we're just starving for something new.
Right.
Like, for example, it just released, but like Psycho Gorman has had the biggest online campaign that I've seen. There's been almost no actual like promotional campaign beforehand that isn't doing what like online social media campaigns are. So I feel like that might be what gives it the second resurgence that it's needed as we're kind of like re-navigating this new territory.
Yeah. I think the weird thing is, because I get whenever we post about these delays, I always see like some of the comments on Twitter, and a lot of them are like, just put it on streaming already. But then, the big thing is for these studios is like, if we do that, we're going to lose money. Like, flat out when Wonder Woman 84 came out, like, they said, Patty Jenkins said, this movie will now lose money. Like, they knew that was kind of what they decided to do. But I think that, yeah, if you're Disney and you're like, well, Black Widow, it could have made like better part of $1 billion. And what if we put it out finally and it makes $500 million? Because right now it's, if it opens in May, things are not going to be normal, and it can't make what it would have. But still, is that better for us in the long run? Because again, it is financially, all these movies were made with such high budgets, the ones we're talking about right now, that they kind of needed to justify their existence. But you're right, Kim, of course, it is the MCU. It's not like, oh no, they're dead if they lose money on this one movie. But yeah, I think it's a really strange middle ground it puts Black Widow in. But yeah, I do wonder, like, where do you guys sort of stand on that? Like, overall, like the just release them on streaming, versus would you like them to wait for the most part here? Because putting aside the fact that a lot of us would just like to see these movies because they look cool or we're into them, it's like, on the other hand, it's kind of like, we just talked about Godzilla versus Kong the other day. It's like, part of me wishes, if they'd waited 6 months, I could have seen it in IMAX and it would have been cooler. Like, do you think like it does come down to some of these, like, just personally speaking, if you like want that theatrical experience or not, versus I could watch this at home, that makes you fall on one side or the other?
Yeah. To a degree, I think a film like Fast 9, I mean, that demands to be seen in the cinema. Or theaters, but something like, that's all about these amazing huge stunts and the spectacle. And although something like Black Widow has that to a degree, I think that would work equally well on a streaming release, because that's maybe more about, or a lot about, the story and the characters. And there are some films like Jungle Cruise we were talking about that still got its summer release, I believe, at the moment. being kind of a family movie, you know, if you look at the toll the pandemic has taken on families and their finances this year, are families going to be, you know, is it going to be top of their priorities to take a family trip to the cinema in the autumn to see Jungle Cruise? Does it make sense to release that on you know, streaming platform?
Right.
Yeah, and like, I feel like there's certain movies that do really rely on the collective experience. Like Nia DaCosta explained it why she was pushing Candyman, how there's just some moments in film that we want to see the crowd reaction together. It's like the first time we all watched Get Out and had that collective gasp towards the end where we realized our like protagonist was going to survive. There's certain moments that are meant for audience reactions because we get to have that collective community experience.
Mm-hmm. You just, Kim, you touched upon this a little bit, but yeah, a few of the movies that have not moved yet that are still set to open kind of between now and July include, besides Black Widow, Free Guy, F9, Cruella, Venom, There Will Be Carnage, Top Gun Maverick, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, Jungle Cruise. Of those, is there, you know, you mentioned a little bit, Kim, but is there ones that jump out at you as they'll probably make a move there? They'll probably pivot one or two of those to streaming.
I mean, maybe Venom. That's another film that I can see working on that platform as well as in the theatre. Yeah, otherwise, and Cruella, although I have, is that not already slated for a Disney Plus release?
It's not, but there's been constant rumors for several months now that was one they've been, as much as they've been saying Black Widow has not been, Cruella has been constantly talked about as
and
likely.
For the same reasons as I'd said about Jungle Cruise, I think that makes sense to pivot to Disney Plus.
What about you, Vanessa?
I honestly think the same when it comes to Venom. I think Venom would actually do really well on streaming versus theaters because I feel like it's a sequel that everyone's been like excited for and curious about considering the talent attached to it, but it also feels like a great like staying in on the weekend, you know, watch it together and just kind of like not like talk through it, but you know, the kind of movie that you watch together and you want to like have running commentary on. I think it might actually do it service better to move to streaming.
Mm-hmm. They'd have to sell Venom though, right? Because Sony doesn't have its own. So who do you think? What streaming service should?
Just gonna mention that. No. It's because I think it's so funny because Sony doesn't have their own big streaming service. It's like the crazy one, of course, just to consider is what if it was Disney Plus, right? Like because right now we talk like, you know, a constant kind of thing that's annoying if you're a Marvel fan is none of the Sony SpiderMan movies are on Disney Plus. They could be like, they could make a deal to license them, but right now they're not. And you can't watch the Spider-Man MCU movies and you can't watch the Incredible Hulk when you're trying to watch all the MCU movies there, but because that's Universal. But it would be, so I don't know, like Disney Plus would be the first thing where you'd be like, maybe like what if, but I don't know. Could it be a Peacock original, Venom, There Will Be Carnage?
Or even Amazon.
Oh, you know, Amazon seems like a good. I think that's a
Apple TV. Make a move.
Oh, there you go. There's a lot of players here. I agree with you guys. I think Cruella just seems like there's a reason it keeps being talked about like that. I just feel like it probably would work well in that regard. People might not even know, by the way, that's Emma Stone playing young Cruella, and the one picture they keep showing us, she looks like Susie Sue, and I'm kind of intrigued by that. It's like going for like a 70s like kind of weird punk thing on Cruella. But yeah, I think that's a possibility. Venom's interesting because it was such a surprise hit, the first one. But yeah, we're in weird times because a year ago there were movies I was so sure would never debut on streaming, and then crazy stuff happened. So we'll see. Guys, we're going to move on from there, but I want to thank everyone so much for watching right now. And I want to say, if you have not, please subscribe to our channel for videos every weekday. Hit that like and that bell for us. We're not going to have a new SJU tomorrow, but we will be back on Friday. We're going to talk about WandaVision, both episode 3 and 4. So be there for that. Let's do a bit of a little news roundup here. There was a report yesterday that they are moving forward now with the sequel to Tomb Raider, the one with Alicia Vikander. Am I saying her name right? I don't know. From a couple years ago. But it's going to be Misha Green, the creator of Lovecraft Country, is going to write and make her feature directorial debut with this Tomb Raider sequel. What do you guys think? Are you excited, A, about a Tomb Raider sequel, and B, specifically about Misha Green doing it?
I mean, I was not particularly excited about a Tomb Raider sequel. The reboot was fine. It was not brilliantly received, was it? But having said that, Misha Green taking the reins is very exciting. Yeah, it gets me excited for it. It makes me want to watch a Tomb Raider movie for maybe the first time ever. I love Lovecraft Country. And maybe she can play up some of those supernatural horror elements, some of the horror in the supernatural a bit more. And the other thing I wanted to say about that was that it's been under the ownership of male directors, and as a property and as a character, Lara Croft has been criticized for being this male fantasy over the years, and having Misha Green on board kind of, it looks like it might be a way to reimagine her a little bit. Maybe she can play. I know Alicia Vikander brought some of that to it. Maybe together they'll bring something very feminist to the screen.
Honestly, wholeheartedly agree. I love Misha Green, and while I really truly love the Tomb Raider games, I don't really get the same sense of like tension and anxiety and fear and like that rush that I get playing the games as translated to the movies. The movies can typically just be any scavenger hunt. So I'm hoping those elements actually get brought into the Tomb Raider movies that actually make the video game so compelling.
Yeah, I think I'm similar to you guys in that, yeah, it's like I was whatever about them doing a sequel to the movie, which I thought was fine. But then when you get like an exciting person attached to it, suddenly it makes your interest so much higher. Lovecraft Country was interesting for me because I didn't think the entire season was fully successful, but I adored the pilot, and I thought a lot of the episodes were great. And it's so audacious. Like, I just like the idea of someone who's like can go wild like Misha Green clearly can when you watch that show. Doing a Tomb Raider movie. I think that sounds super fun. It is weird though, because like you mentioned, Kim, it's like, it's not like that movie was like, it did okay, but it wasn't like people were like, yeah, this is awesome. They completely nailed it. And now it's taken quite a while for the sequel to get off the ground. Do you think like, it can be enough? Like it's always a question of how long is too long to wait for a sequel. Can they get people like re-excited by it when it's going to eventually come out? We assume 2023 maybe or so.
Yeah, I think they can. I think, it's a well-known franchise that's well-loved, and, it has longevity. I think, there are examples. People didn't like the amazing Spider-Man movies, but Spider-Man is still going strong in theaters, So, they can totally re-stoke that excitement for Tomb Raider.
Mm-hmm. It actually reminds me, we were just talking about with Godzilla versus Kong and people being ho-hum on maybe both the other Godzilla movies, but then you see that trailer, you're like, yeah, this is what I want to see.
Yeah.
What do you think, Vanessa?
Well, yeah, it's actually funny that you brought up Godzilla versus Kong too, because like Adam Wingard is a director that previously did something astoundingly different, and his name being attached is something that made a lot of people want to see Godzilla versus Kong. Or another example is the Thor series, how the first two movies were like, received pretty fine, but then Ragnarok happened, and like Taika Waititi's attachment, a lot of it is what really changed the tone and revamped the series. So maybe this is what's coming for Tomb Raider.
Yeah. I think it's great when you can get someone who can just bring a totally wild take on it is awesome for a franchise like that. We were just kind of talking about a bunch of different streaming services. We were talking about Venom. Paramount Plus is officially launching on March 4th. They've kind of started to ramp up their marketing. Again, for those who don't recall, this is going to be the rebranding of what was previously CBS All Access, new name, putting in way more of the content from across the board for Viacom CBS, from Nickelodeon, from BET, from MTV, and Paramount Movies, and trying to start the slow launch internationally. So we got this. I think this is kind of the first rebranding we've seen of the new streaming era, right? Like I've already launched, pretty big name service going to a different one. So we were wanting to know if, streaming services got to take a mulligan and maybe change their name from what they first chose. What should they pick? Or maybe you think that the name they chose is the absolutely perfect one. And I want to start with the one that I think has been heavily debated. And there's been a lot of talk about whether, all the things of the launch of this service, what went wrong, what they're trying to fix now. But HBO Max, should they stick with that name? I think they will. But if you could magically change the name of the HBO Max, would you? And if you did, what would it be?
This is a fun one to think about, mostly because every single version of their names make it impossible to figure out exactly what service you have.
Right.
I feel like for me, big dummy who don't know which service is which, just HBO, this is the one that you're trying to buy, would have been so much more helpful for me. Because between Max Go and what do I have no clue. That and Crackle should probably take a second look at naming.
Crackle, which is owned by Sony, but they clearly have not tried to go bigger. So you're saying then just keep the name HBO? They should have just used the HBO name from the get-go then?
They should have just used the HBO name, or just found a way to consolidate it all into this is what this service has versus this is what this service has. And even just keeping the name Clean HBO lets them know I'm getting everything that I have if I have HBO plus what's online.
Right.
Were they right not to use Warner Brothers at all? That's what I wonder, because it seems like, how much, because I think to me, Warner Brothers doesn't mean too much, but I don't know, should they have worked that in somehow?
Yeah, I feel like that would have made more sense to me than HBO Max, although I agree with you, Vanessa. If anything, they should have just kept the HBO name on its own, because so many people thought, oh, do I already have, so many people literally didn't even understand that they could get HBO Max for free if they were an HBO subscriber, because it wasn't made clear. But I do wonder, Warner Brothers or Warner Media or something like that, it's not, no one's Disney as far as what you're getting with this name.
Yeah.
But could Warner Brothers in some form of work? What do you think, Kim?
Yeah, I mean, no, we don't get HBO Max in the UK, incidentally, but and I was going to say I like the name HBO Max purely because it sounds nice, and it sounds like I'm getting HBO maximized, which is great. But now you've said what you've said, I do think they should have incorporated Warner Brothers somehow, though I don't know how they would do that. I don't know.
I think about the meetings they must have had, how late at night they must have been up talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
We'll try to go a little bullet point through this. So I'll just say I'll group together a couple of these. Hulu and Prime. Would you change either of those, or you like them just how they are?
I would change Amazon Prime Video, and despite your, Vanessa, your compelling argument for telling it as it is, labeling it, this is what you get, I think it's boring. It's like the placeholder name. I would like to see it called something like, Amazania. How about that? Or Amazoinks.
I like Amazoinks. Honestly, I agree, because I feel like when you just attach the Prime name to it, it also doesn't really make clear what you're getting either, since it's so associated with the service that gets you next day shipping, and also you don't really know if it also includes the Kindle Unlimited, which is additional, Amazon Music, which is additional. So it would offer some clarification in terms of this is different, and also make it funner.
Yeah, it's so weird, because especially with Amazon Prime, there's talk about how many people do not have no idea that there's a bunch of shows they can watch and movies because they have that next day shipping. So something like that I think would have been very smart. And I think Hulu, as much as Hulu is just kind of a nonsense word, I think it works.
Yeah, I like it.
It's actually Apple TV Plus. Again, they love these pluses. I think the problem there is that they already had the device, the Apple TV, and so adding the Plus, again, was this an actual new cert? It was very unclear. I understand that they wanted an Apple in there, but it's just because they already had the hardware, it just seemed like something different.
I quite like adding a plus to anything. Any of these works with a plus for me.
It
I like,
helps at
you know.
least something differentiate. Yeah.
Tells me I'm getting more. I don't know if I am, but I like that.
I feel like Disney Plus, I think we probably would agree, works. They kind of they managed to put their foot down with that Plus, right? Like as you're saying, Kim, it works, but Disney Plus is like, I don't know if they were technically the first to launch with that Plus name, but I think we all associate it with. But so let's talk about another controversial one, which is Peacock. What do we all think of Peacock? Do you love the name? Do you hate the name? What would your name be for?
I mean, Peacock is terrible. I mean, I don't mean the service. I mean the name. I don't know what I'm getting when I hear Peacock. It feels like you know, it's showing off to me. You know, it's like I'm the best streaming service. Look at me. But what am I actually getting? I don't know. Maybe Universal Plus, Eric.
There you go. What about you, Vanessa?
Universal Plus would have been way better, because as much as I love Peacock, I loathe the name, and Universal Plus would have like illuminated at least what they had on there, because it wasn't until I actually looked at Peacock that I was like, oh, all of the Universal monsters are here. If only that name was associated with it, and then I would know.
It's so weird because they chose the NBC like kind of mascot logo. And I was like, that would be like if Disney Plus was called like Mouse, or, you know, when the WB was so closely associated with Michigan J. Frog, if HBO Max was called Frog. I don't know. It's just a really strange.
Yeah.
And I don't know why they leaned, because, you know, one of the reasons CBS All Access is changing their name is because CBS is only a network that US people would even have that identification with. And so, yeah, like, why go with Peacock versus Universal, which, even if Universal, again, no one's Disney, no one has that, like, we know what we're getting, but Universal is just a cooler name, you know?
Yeah.
Peacock, well, everything is. So, Universal Plus. I'm with you, Kim. You're selling me on just put a plus on everything.
Yeah, the plus fixes everything.
It definitely does. All right, let's close out here with some live chat AMA, some questions from you guys. James Bunt asks, what was your last instant classic movie? So for him, he said it was Knives Out. What was the most recent movie you saw and it was just like instantly like, that's one of my favorites?
I brought it up earlier, but my God, is Psycho Gorman an instant classic for me, because it's just inspired by so many other instant classics. It's from within 10 seconds, you know if you're going to love it or not. And I watched it the first time last year, the second time this year, and this is the best review I can give anything, but on several different occasions, I almost laughed until I barfed. So it's a perfect movie. I can't wait to just show this to every other person that I love.
I need to see that movie, and you're reminding me that I do. You're reminding me that I do. Kim?
Well, I also need to see that movie. For me, I think it was, you know, in talking about Lovecraft earlier, I think it was Color Out of Space, the Nick Cage, Lovecraft adaptation, because it was such a throwback to the 80s horror that I love, like the Stuart Gordon movies, like From Beyond and Reanimator, of course.
Yes.
So and having loved Lovecraft Country last year as well, it's really reignited that love of Lovecraft for me. So Color Out of Space. How about you, Eric?
I think for me, the last time I remember a movie ending and just being like, that was made for me, oh my God, was Ready or Not. I was so into it. It just, I thought the trailer looked cool, but then when I was watching the movie, I was like, yeah, this is my jam. This is totally everything I love. Like that mix of, you know, the dark humor and the sort of crazy, shocking deaths. And I thought the performances were all great. It's always hard, you know, it's a tricky tone to pull off when you're mixing those sort of dark elements with humor. But I thought that movie completely nailed it. So I think that's been a frequent rotation for me ever since I saw that film. So those are our recommendations, James. Matan Valinsky asks, do you have a wish list for a third Avatar as an Airbender series on Paramount Plus? I know there's talk about this. They have mine is to have it take place in the 90s. Do you mean, I'm trying to think what that means. I guess because in the Airbender series, it was like kind of like the mid 1800s to the early 20s was like the
the
equivalent.
turn of the century.
Yeah, so if this would be our equivalent of the 90s.
Yeah, some grunge Avatar.
Yeah, some grunge, some boy bands. So I don't know everyone's Airbender fan base here.
Man, boy band benders would be really good. Actually, like Bender in the boy band is a different bender.
Bend it like boy bands. Yes. Guys, I don't know if I don't know if you're Airbender fans, but if you are, do you have what you'd like to see in a third Airbender series?
I mean, I've watched it. I enjoyed it. Not a huge fan, but I enjoyed it. This is what I would want to see. I love crossovers. One of my favorite anime series is Tokyo Ghoul. So I would like to see a crossover with Tokyo Ghoul.
Oh God, I love Tokyo Ghoul. I think the 50s would actually be really fun because it's such a big change in social construct between anything that we've seen in previous eras, where things started to like shift into what we know looks like now, and like the family dynamics and like stuff like that now. And I think specifically setting Avatar in that, maybe even having the next Avatar be like a 50s housewife would be a really interesting take on it.
It starts like WandaVision.
Yeah.
I actually like that idea a lot too. And by the way, I should say I really loved that aspect of Korra of like being like, okay, if we're gonna show what it would be the equivalent now if we're in like the 20s ish of that world. I like that 50s idea a lot because my first thought was something that would be kind of like set in the ancient past, because I really like that the flashback episode they did with was it Wan, the first Airbender. I don't think that specific character, although I wouldn't be against it, but like something in the past would be cool. But I also I don't know if I need something yet that is as recent past as that. I like the 50s idea a lot though, of just going to, and plus, that gets in more of the Korra characters can still be around. Because one thing with Korra, of course, was like, well, they're either dead or they're very, very, very old. But in a 50s set they had
like Last Jedi issues of just like, you missed the prime. They're all, I think Vanessa's right. You go World War II, because they also need to have like the machines change of like whatever the new bad people are, so being able to take the next level of like the submarines of World War II and the aircraft. It seems like that's where they kind of were already heading. So I think that's if you're not just going to adapt the comics that explain the in-between of Airbender and Korra, which also might be an easy slam dunk, is just do the source material. But I agree with Vanessa. That's where you go next.
And then lastly, we've got Philip A. Demick, who's just kind of asking a broad question about what we know about the untitled Spider-Man movie. Now, there's the specific question here. We're not quite sure, Philip, because you ask, why is it out for Christmas ahead of Doctor Strange and other titled MCU movies? The movie is scheduled to open in December, but there's also been some leaked set photos that we're not going to post because we legally can't, that seem that it's a Christmas setting for the movie. I don't know. We only know what the rumors we've all kind of heard, which is crazy multiverse shenanigans.
We know that Dane DeHaan's not coming back.
We do. He retweeted Fandom to say so. But also there's we mentioned that it is MCU, but it's also Sony. So that's the funny thing is like if they bump Black Widow and it creates again that whole bumping all their movies, then that means that they have to negotiate with Sony about Doctor Strange as well, because they release the movies themselves. But I think with the other thing about Doctor Strange is it just sounds like they're all tied together, and that this movie will be set in between WandaVision and Doctor Strange. Vanessa, are you excited for this new untitled Spider-Man movie?
I'm very excited for this new untitled Spider-Man movie, and I don't try to speculate too much, but knowing that it has a Christmas setting, I'm wondering if the reason why we haven't gotten a title is because it might illustrate that that's where it's set.
That is very possible.
If it's going to have home in the title, is it Spider-Man Home Alone?
Yeah. I think how do they get home in there has got to be we were talking about the HBO Max question. I also see them, the MCU guys staying up late at night to be like, what is our home title?
Home for the holidays.
Home for the holidays. The home is where you make it. Guys, we are going to end for there, but thank you all for joining us. Again, we'll be here on Friday. We're going to do a WandaVision centric episode. Kim, Vanessa, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. See you soon. Bye.